Want the reward? Do the damn work. Challenge yourself. Inspire change. Choice, not luck. Hey everybody, this is Todd Crandell with another episode of Ignite Euphoria, and you are in for a treat today. I have this awesome dude, Mr. Stephen Nemeth, all the way from Los Angeles. How are you, sir?
I'm swell, but manage your expectations, please.
I love when you email me that the other day. I get my expectations are way up here with you, you know?
Yeah, I hate it when people say, "Oh, this movie is going. We're going to make the greatest movie." Well, no, you don't know that. Your intention is to make it great. Let's see where it goes. Anyhow, I digressed already.
Well, no, let's I tell you what, let's start with this. Why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do with respect to making movies?
Oh, all right. Well, that's certainly cutting to the chase. I wanted to tell you about my morning first, but I guess that'll have to wait for the next episode.
Well, you do what you want. You want to talk about the morning?
I appreciate that. So I don't want to be defined as a movie producer, but I am, and I think I'm pretty good at it. And I think my taste is really good. I don't mean to. I only say that because I share taste with people I find incredibly tasteful, and and get involved with material that is basically generated by people who are almost universally known and objectively known as worthy of the time, effort, and energy to film, essentially. But I am currently in the narrative feature business, because I love it, but because I am doing so to fund my documentary habit. Let's not call it an addiction, but we can segue into that vis-a-vis this podcast and your life's mission. Well, one of your life's missions.
True.
And I'm really more of a social justice advocate, an environmental advocate. I sit on quite a few boards, which I think probably somehow is connected to a need to satisfy my insecurities. But I zero in on really interesting movies, mostly biopics, mostly adaptations of fine pieces of literature by known entities, because it's really lower hanging fruit. It's not something you need to explain to people. The motivation for the motivation by which you are doing it, the motivation for which you're doing it. I also find it more interesting. I also, frankly, like a good documentary. I'd rather zero in on true stories and stuff I'm going to learn from than roll the dice on crappy fiction that may or may not work or may not move the needle. And I think that stems from my ADD, because I don't read swiftly, and if I'm going to take 2 hours of my life or 5 hours of my life to read a book, I would much prefer a nice Eleanor Roosevelt biography over, again, some piece of crappy fiction that may or may not be crappy. I just don't know until I've read it. But at least I know that when I read the Eleanor Roosevelt biography, I'm going to learn something about her. And I'm already predisposed because I find her interesting. And I don't know if she'd refer to herself as she, her, or she, they now. I'm not sure, actually. That would be interesting. She was a complicated character. That's good. I know her daughter. Her granddaughter, Juliana. I'm going to ask her. And I didn't choose Eleanor Roosevelt because I knew her granddaughter. That was just a weird, random, serendipitous nugget I just threw in there. So anyhow, I make I think really interesting movies, and it's not about quantity, it's about quality. I know plenty of people that make movies just because they like to make movies and be on sets. That's not me. And I was a bad actor early on, and then I became an agent at William Morris for less than a year. And then I moved on to start the movie division of the Rhino Record Company, started by my brother-in-law and his partner. And then we spun off the movie company when the Warner Record Group bought Rhino Records. So have been heading up the Rhino Records Company, the Rhino Films Company, which was a division of the sort of pop culturally and iconic record company Rhino, which still is, for 25 years or so. And that's really my brand, I suppose. And I have an obligation to, maintain the integrity of the brand that, that deserves that. So I can't just make anything. I don't want to just make anything. I don't know if that's, too much of a circuitous response to your question, but I'm a movie producer, and I like to zero in on stuff that matters. That's basically it. Sorry.
You're, as usual, and it's, when I had the pleasure of hanging out with you a couple weeks ago in person, and I said this to, to Julie, who was with us, you met her as well. And when we left your house, we both said, he never talked about any of the things that he's done once. And I think on the back of that Racing for Recovery shirt, it has empathy, humility, and gratitude on it. And that really struck me as we were talking about all kinds of things, music and stories and laughing and fruit and all kinds of stuff. And you never really talked about yourself. And I found that very interesting. It's rare that you meet people that at some point don't say anything about themselves. And the reason I led with that question is I simply wanted people to know what you do. And I appreciate you answering the question the way you did.
Oh, that's awfully kind of you. I really appreciate you saying that. I appreciate you noticing that. It's not a conscious, decision, but I do also recognize when people are completely self-centered and only talk about themselves and never ask how you are. So thank you for being the person that zeroes in on things that are rather subtle and important.
So now, why don't you talk about your morning?
Oh, that's so sweet. Well, we have I have a house guest that moved in yesterday because her house is being demoed up the street. And it's not that interesting a morning, by the way. It's just that she has a puppy that, as puppies do, urinate. And she sort of dropped the ball, and I was running around chasing a puppy who has a tendency to, want to spot all over. And I love dogs as much as Julie. We both, have friends who rescue Weimaraners, and I do as well. But the problem with peeing dogs and cats is not that they pee. It's that you don't know when and where they've peed. So you don't have the opportunity to clean up that pee. And then before long, your house becomes that house that everybody says, well, a nice guy, but, kind of smelled like pee. And you sort of don't recognize that your house smells like pee because it's been subtly building up because of all the pee that's been laid, stealthily, on the leg of a chair, under a piano, etc. So it was a little, as I was chasing it around with a cup of coffee, and obviously spilling the coffee everywhere, that kind of thing. So it's not that interesting a story, and I apologize, but I do have if we have time in this podcast, I will tell you a really good dog poo story. Okay.
Well, I'm going to ask you for some stories today, and I'm going to give you a story about the house smelling like pee a little bit. My grandmother, who I wouldn't be here without her, and there'd be no Racing for Recovery without her. She had a couple of cats, and her house had that aroma, if you will, and she never thought there was anything wrong. And I'm like, Grandma, this place reeks. We got to do something here. And she's like, what do you mean? I can't smell anything, But yeah, so I understand, right?
You first used that word reek when you smoked your first joint, probably
Correct.
in 19 80 something.
Something, right? Yeah. When you're
It
told that
reeks.
it reeks, right?
That was the first time I ever used the word reek, I think. Anyhow.
So you're wearing a Racing for Recovery shirt, which I appreciate. Let me ask you this. What's your interest in Racing for Recovery, and what do you think you can do with this thing of ours?
Well, I think in full disclosure, it's important to know that I want to support you and all the other, clean, sober, recovering people that I know and love, and the ones that I don't. But I, in full disclosure, am not a sober person. I'm not an addict, however, and I'm blessed, I believe, to have a non-addictive personality. And at some point in my friendship with you, you may say you're delusional, dude, but I don't think I am.
No.
I enjoy a glass of a wine and beer and what have you, and a cocktail here and there, but I just don't have the need or the desire to indulge in excess, nor do I have any, predilections for drugs of any kind, really. I do, however, appear to be sort of a magnet for people that do, which is bizarre. And I don't know if that's a need of mine to be, maternal or paternal, sorry, or maternal, I guess. I mean, Mother Earth, etc. But I do have a lot of people in my life that do need help and or have gotten help, and I'm extremely proud of. So much of the addiction, paradigm, and I'm no expert, you are, it is really, I think, obviously driven by a lot of people who have issues they don't have the ability to get help with, whether it's, anxiety disorder or depression or, bipolar disorder or whatever. It's the age-old adage of self-medication that people turn to feel better. And so in many respects, it's not, well, in every respect, it's not really their fault. So this is not their choice. It's like all sorts of things. It's not a choice. The choice is, I suppose, as you would probably underscore, is choosing to lick it and choosing to get it behind you and being, strong and diligent and maintaining that, which is kind of an amazing feat. As I don't know what the recidivism rate is, but I think it's rather high, if I'm not mistaken.
It
and
is.
The problem with that recidivism rate, say that 10 times fast.
Recidivism
rate is that I think what happens is people will, let's say they do, I don't know, 12 bumps of cocaine a day, and then they've stopped, or 8 balls or whatever they are. And then when they choose to, break their sobriety a month or 6 months or 3 weeks later, whatever it is, they have a tendency to A, overdo it, or B, do what they typically did, but their body can't handle it anymore, and then they die. I'm just, sort of underscoring a point you already know and most of your listeners already know. But so if you're going to get clean and sober, you got to get serious about it, because I would think, and again, I think I'm just theorizing here, that you have a much more likely chance of dying if you, well, I don't know. It's stupid of me to say. I'm no expert. I just feel like, you're really playing with fire if you actually, decide one night, I can handle it. I did it for a month. Whoa, look at me, and then good night. That's just so damn sad. And I've also, again, I've had so many interesting people in my life, very well-known people. And one of them is no secret. It's Hunter Thompson. Not that he was a good friend of mine. I've only met him. Well, I met him quite a few times on the phone and on the movie set. I produced a film called Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is the drug Bible, I suppose, of that period. Or one of them, one of 2 or 3. And he, he clearly was he's a brilliant man, a great writer, a character beyond your wildest imaginations. But the drug use was so excessive and so intense that it was obviously very clear that he was just numbing whatever pain he was experiencing. And that was probably emotional. In the end, he killed himself from what we are all told was actual physical pain from his back and whatever ailments that were, causing him to be wheelchair bound. But a lot of, here's a guy that, would he have been as interesting and as funny? I don't know. Would he have gone to the lengths he did and become as well known and outlandish as he was if he were, drinking, 66 ounces of water a day? I don't know. But I guess my point is that so many of these really, these folks, for no fault of their own, are turning to something to help themselves when nobody else is really there to help them with the things that they really need help with. So, and to that end, I was introduced to you via John Sullivan and his other Little League baseball coach in Malibu, who apparently, kudos to them, they won their regional championship.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, which, by the way, is a big deal. I mean, I think that's a big deal.
It is.
So anyhow, he turned me on to the project he was doing with you, and then I started to research you. And you're even better in person than you are on paper, and you're way more handsome than I had expected. And you do have a tattoo or two, in case anybody was wondering. And you do have a tendency to spend too much money on T-shirts, but maybe that's just a one-off thing. It's a way of, maybe that's the addiction you have, which is fine. You're punted one bad one for another one that's fairly innocuous.
You're bringing up a defenseless Judas Priest shirt that I wore to your house on this podcast.
Do you think you'll lose sympathy and empathy from people if they knew how much you paid for that T-shirt?
Yeah, that was pretty.
Right,
let's not do that. Yeah.
No, let's not go there because but incidentally, I once went to an ACLU event in downtown Los Angeles for lunch. It was a fundraiser, and I was pulling my car in, and I was about 5 minutes late for the lunch, and they handed me the valet tickets. Downtown LA, it's very difficult to park, and it was $40 to park. And I said, $40 to park? You got to be kidding me. And they said, well, if you're going to lunch, it's only, validated and it'll be $16. I said, God, $16, that's crazy. And I'm going to make a point here, by the way. And they said, well, where are you having lunch? I said, I'm going to the ACLU luncheon. They said, well, that's not a lunch. That's an event. So we don't validate for that. So it'll be $40. And I said, you got to be kidding me. And at the time, I was on a board where we were building schools in Africa primarily for girls. And we could send a young girl in Africa to school for a year for $16. Wow. And I looked at the valet attendant, not that he could do anything about it. I said, dude, just let me slide through here. I'll take that $16 and send a girl in Africa to school for a year. Wow. He said, oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I don't have the authority to do that. There are cameras looking at me and blah, 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 blah. I said, all right, I appreciate that. I backed out and I looked for street parking for about 25 minutes. I found it. I raced down the block. I was sweating. I was late for lunch, but I just couldn't do that. Couldn't pay $40 to park. I couldn't justify that. Could I afford it? Who can afford $40 to park? It's not right. It's obscene. Right. But in New York City, it's probably $100. So I probably being laughed at by folks in the East. But the point is that let's have a sense of perspective. And let's think about what we could do with this money for that cause and that money for this cause, et cetera, when we are, indulging. Having said that, your indulgence with that one t-shirt is okay, because you do so much for so many. And if that gave you some pleasure, I'm really happy for you. The point is that the $40 spent on parking gave me no pleasure, helped no one except the bottom line of a hotel corporation. And so I had to defy it. I had to be a fighter in that moment.
You know, talking to you like this, I like you even more, and it's interesting. I've been called many things, and I know my faults. And one of my faults is I am a terrible businessman when it comes to money. But I will say this: when it comes to passion and just doing the right thing, I'm, quote, a millionaire in that. And I can guarantee you, at some point, that Judas Priest shirt, I will give that away to somebody else, because that's what I do. And I want to bring this up. You reminded me of I was doing Ironman South Africa. I think this was 2003. And, and the bikes that we ride, you could buy a car with how much some of these bikes cost. And thankfully, one of my bikes that I used at that time was given to me for some of the things I do with Racing for Recovery. But having said that, I'm riding, and we went through a part of South Africa. We were in Port Elizabeth, and we went through a section where it was absolute poverty. I mean, shanties on the side of the road. And there was these kids outside who had no shoes on, no shirt, playing, and they were wanting me to give them something. So I took my water bottles that had my nutrients to actually do the Ironman in, and I threw my bottles to them. And I watched these kids go after these bottles like they were gold. And it changed me. It literally did. I said, this is not right. I'm riding this very expensive bike, doing this event, and here these guys probably don't know where they're going to get their next meal from. And it kind of brought life's perspective back to me. And I started running out of gas, meaning I didn't have enough stuff in me. I had to stop at an aid station and get some nutrients in me. And I'll never forget that story. Seeing kids living like that, it really resonated with me. So maybe I'll take the Judas Priest shirt over there.
I don't know if it's going to be the best and highest use for it, because I think keeping you happy, to keep you going, to keep doing the things you're doing, is probably for the greater good than one child getting that t-shirt and not caring about it the way you did.
Good
not
point.
Not even knowing Judas Priest. But I want to talk about a t-shirt story and a Guatemala story in a second. But I want to mention the bicycle situation. Because you are a messenger for a cause, and you're on this insane and impressive mission, which I'm so humbled by, you need the highest tech, best equipment you can get to compete on that level. Because if you're not competitive and you're not, at the top of your game, you're not going to fade, because you're relevant. You always will be. You will fade from that platform, from that, microphone that you need to be even more effective in with your respect to your mission. So I don't begrudge you a moment for having a $13,000 bicycle, or whatever it is, 720 titanium, this and that, because you need it, and somebody sponsored you, and that was great, and you need to be competitive. Okay, so that's my point. No guilt there, but I get the visceral, empathy you feel with the children who just were so excited to get a bottle of water. Maybe it was that you were their idol, and they got your bottle of water. How about that?
Wow.
I have a really, really funny t-shirt story. Is the format here free form? And
you're good. Let it roll.
Okay. I just don't want to bogart, the time with stuff that may or may not be relevant, okay. So there's this hysterical comedy writer by the name of Bruce Villanch. I think it's Villanch. You'd know him from Hollywood Squares. And he was Bette Midler's writer, and he writes for probably still the Academy Awards. He's just a brilliant raconteur and comedy writer, and a really lovely man. He's large, and he is famous for his T-shirt collection. And he had thousands of T-shirts. I don't know why people give them to him. He saves them. I think he wears them once or twice. And he was telling me once that he'd sent a crate of T-shirts to somewhere in Africa. Okay. And because I said, what do you do with them all? Speaking of Judas Priest T-shirts going to wherever you were. And he said, well, I stayed in a warehouse, but I did ship this one crate to Africa. And I said, and I don't know how it came up, but this is one of the most serendipitous and coincidental moments I can imagine. I said, I was up late at night and I was watching one of those terribly sad commercials, Save the Children commercials, with, 15, 18, 20 kids in frame and the camera panning on them and give however much blah, blah, blah. And I said, there was this one kid I thought was hysterical. He was not hysterical. I'm sorry. I thought it was visually sort of interesting to see this kid, very skinny, in an enormous Blake Carrington T-shirt, or Blake Carrington for president or something like that. Blake Carrington was the protagonist on Dynasty, a cheesy show in the 80s, right? And Bruce says to me, oh, did it have a wine stain on the right shoulder? And I said, well, that sounds familiar. I think so. He said, well, that's my T-shirt. There's only one of them. I remember spilling wine on it at a party, and it was in that crate that went to Africa, and you saw my T-shirt on television. Now,
That's
come on,
awesome.
that's good.
That's good.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, buddy, talking to you like this, when we were hanging out and just doing the sports trivia and telling these stories, I love it. So to answer your question about this format, we don't have a format. It's say whatever you want and let it go.
Who was the 5'3" shortstop or second baseman for the Kansas City Royals?
Oh my God. I have no, Adam, do you have any idea who that? No, my producer's drawing a blanket. I don't know.
I'm not a baseball freak, but it's Freddie Patek. I don't know why. Google it. Not now, but
well,
maybe he's 5'4", 5'5". Sorry, Freddie.
We're not Googling though, right? That goes against the thing.
We're not. But the person to your right can.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I had a girlfriend whose brother was in the Peace Corps in Guatemala, and he was living in this little town. We went to visit him one week. I don't remember when. I would think just before Christmas. And we asked them what the kids would really want. And, not that it's the best, example to set, but he said they really love candy, good candy. So we filled a suitcase with candy, and we just took a big suitcase to this little town. And I can't tell you, a la your experience on the bike, how wonderful it was just to hand out nice, big, beautiful candy bars and things to kids who, never get that kind of treat. And it was, oh my God. I mean, the point is we do things selfishly to make ourselves feel better, sadly, if we have a conscience. But the residual benefits are that other people are. Important thing is that other people are, I don't know, the recipients of our, let's call it largesse, but that's being generous.
I love that we're talking about this. I saw Motley Crue, where was I? Sunday night in Detroit. They played up in Detroit, which, by the way, your buddy John will be going to Elton John with us, so that's all good. But
he's having drinks at my house tonight.
Oh, is he?
Yes, he's got a fundraiser in LA tomorrow night, and I can't make that. But I said, if you're in town the night before, I'll have a few people over and let's, and I've got a half a dozen really, really interesting and, meaningful folks in the movie business from Detroit coming tonight. And it'll be very, very, I think it'll move his needle, so to speak. But anyhow, thank you for that.
No problem.
I kind of ambushed you with that invite, but you were so gracious.
All good. I'm looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to that. With respect to the Motley Crue show, I had a pair of Tommy Lee's drumsticks that we got from a little thing before the show or whatever, and I saw this guy who had a Motley Crue shirt on, a hat on, a bracelet. I mean, he was all decked out in Motley Crue, and I sarcastically said, "Hey, are you a Motley Crue fan?" And he kind of looked at me like, "Of course I am," and I handed him Tommy Lee's drumsticks, and the guy was just over the moon with that. And I love doing stuff like that, right?
How much better is that for you right now in this moment than to have them in a drawer somewhere?
Exactly.
Fantastic.
Yes.
I love random acts of kindness.
They're good things.
They're just the best. Oh, I had a story once where I was walking out of the Ritz-Carlton in Pasadena at a lunch, and a woman hit me back to her big old Cadillac into me as I was walking to my car. And I was okay, though I was bleeding a little on my knee and my pants were torn a bit, and I was a little bit stunned. And an elegant older woman got out of the car. She must have been 80, I don't know. And she said, "What did I just hit?" And I said, "You got really lucky." She said, "Why?" I said, "Because you hit me." And she said, "What do you mean?" I said, "You got really lucky. You hit me." And she was confused by what that meant. And what I was thinking at that moment is that woman could be my mom. Yeah. I could be the most litigious asshole on the planet and make her life so miserable for nothing, right? You know? And she said, "Oh, okay, great." And she drove away. Now, that moment, I felt really angry at her and I thought, damn, she didn't even say, "Honey, can I have your address and send you some flowers? Can I send you a thank you note? Or thank you so much for being so cool?" Nothing, right? Now, I don't judge her because she was, I think, panicking at the moment and just wanted to get out of Dodge and scared and probably had never done something like that, or it's a daily occurrence. I don't know. But when she left, I felt anger. And then I thought, wait a second, I'm not supposed to be letting her off the hook for her. I'm letting her off the hook for me and for all the other people, that could have conceivably have happened to. Though I do think she should have said thank you.
Right.
And, I wasn't really hurt. I was bleeding, though, strangely enough. And it was fine. But again, I mean, can you imagine? I mean, my wife accidentally tapped a person in her car, so much so at a red light that my daughter didn't even know they had tapped another car. And the woman sued her and took her to court and, claimed injuries and this. And that's that's a bit of a metaphor for, or an example of why so many things are so screwed up, Yeah. It's why we pay huge insurance costs. It's why they're, people in situations like that go bankrupt or crazy and do bad things to themselves, So we just have to step up our game with respect to morality and decency. And the truth is, if we all do it, then we'll all do it. And we'll be the recipients of that largesse as well. And then there's that circle that goes around and everybody does, is better for it. It's Agreed. Like holding a door open in a department store when they existed. You can't really hold the door open for Amazon because they just drop things at your door. But I mean, think about it. Let's say I hold a door open in an elevator for somebody to walk in and they don't even give you eye contact. They don't say thank you. To me, I think to myself, well, who raised this person? And sometimes I'm not big enough to let it go. I'll just have to say, "You're very welcome." I'll just have to say something like that. And every now and then somebody will say, "Oh God, I'm sorry, blah, blah, blah. Thank you so much." And then you feel great. And other times they'll look at you like, like, "Who are you, man?" And I want to say, "I'm the nice guy that just held the door open for you. Who are you?" Whatever. I'm so sorry. I'm going off these tangents, but it's so much fun to talk to you about stories.
I love stories. So here, I'm going to go back to that T-shirt, the empathy, humility, and gratitude that's on the back. Give me a story where you felt the most empathy in a situation. What was that like?
God, the most empathy. The most empathy. Well, the first thing that comes to mind, and I'm sure there are many, and I don't know if it's not sympathy, it's empathy and love and caring. My dad died at 61 of esophageal cancer. And a lot of that was, he was born in the north of England, and it had a lot to do with ingesting coal dust, I suppose, because hang on, there's another story I want to tell you. You just heard that beep? I will get into this, but you are more than anybody can appreciate this. I have been quietly on a recumbent bike from the beginning of this call, which I always do for my calls because I need to be in motion. Otherwise, I'm going crazy. And I would be, really, really, really slovenly if I didn't take advantage of certain time that I could actually stay in motion without people knowing, except for the beep that just busted me. And maybe I'm speaking a little more swiftly because I'm actually pedaling, but that's sort of an homage to you. So my dad is dying of cancer. He's on the 8th floor of Cedars-Sinai Hospital. He's 61 years old. To set the tone, it is the legendary John Huston. The legendary director is the suite next door, and he's dying. And his family is congregating, and there's a lot of that's irrelevant. I don't even know why I said that. So I'm holding my dad's hand, and he's not literally. He is. He's one of the nicest persons I'd ever met. Just a good guy. He'd stop and pet a cat for 10 minutes on the street. You could just see how beautiful the relationship was and how much he really cared for that cat and respected the cat. In any event, he said to me, and he was dying. He had died at 6:30 in the morning the next night. This was about 7 or 8 at night. He said, Stephen, I've often asked myself the question, why me? I've often asked myself the question, why me? And then he stopped and he looked and he said, but then again, why not me? And I thought, wow, what a cool dude, man. Like, you're not feeling sorry for yourself. It happened to you. You're a doctor, you're dying, you're gone soon. And you're not like weeping about it. It's just what it is, And I thought, is that an example of empathy for him at that moment? I don't know exactly whether it's empathy or not, but it was certainly huge amount of respect, I think. Wow. And empathy. Yeah. I think.
Wow. Wow. And how old were you at the time?
27, I think. Wow. 27.
How did that situation, what's the word I'm looking for? Not change your life. How did that enhance your life? Experiencing that?
I think, in many respects, I came to the wedding game and the baby game quite a bit later than most people in my life. And I think that had a lot to do with it, primarily because, my mom, who was actually 11 months older than my dad, she was 62 at the time, was, rather old, not old school, but, from a different generation. And I don't think she, at the time, it was 1987, I don't think she at the time really believed that she could turn it around and get her game back. And she didn't feel in her heart that there was a man for her. I don't even think she thought about that. It was sort of, she married this man she loved for, I can't remember how many years they were married, 30 something before he died. And she just wasn't gonna get a man. I don't think she was looking for it. I think she probably could have, because she was really an interesting woman and a former spy. We can talk about that later. But she actually also was too young to pack it in, right? So I suddenly found myself with the magnificent burden, and I use that term as paying homage to a wonderful documentary about a young man named Ren, who we did a documentary on. I'll tell you about him in a minute. And there was a magnificent burden of having the ability to basically be with my mom and take her on vacations and take her to premieres of movies and to do all the things that that are expected of me, really, as her son, to enhance the quality of her life, which in turn obviously enhanced the quality of my life. Though I do think that I probably resented it from time to time in ways that I'm not even aware of. But also, I think it also had a lot to do with the fact that I put off meaningful relationships, whether consciously or subconsciously, because I needed to be there and wanted to be there with and for my mom. And I thought, like, if I'm dating somebody and I'm taking that person here and there and traveling with that person and my mom is alone, I'm just going to feel shitty, you know? So I don't want to do that.
Right.
And that's sort of how it impacted my life. It was the time I spent with my mom. And I think the reason why I got married so late and had a child and another child so late. That's the circuitous roundabout answer to your question.
Good answer. Good answer. Do you want me to go with another question, or you have another story?
No, you just, I'm there's no end to the stories, but you keep going. You keep going, brother.
Well, okay. Give me, what are the things, I'll give you, you can have two. No, I'll say three. You can have three things. I want to know the three things you are most grateful for.
Oh, man. The problem is, if I tell you the three things I'm most grateful for, I mean, I guess it's true. And it has to be my wife, my son, and my daughter. I mean, this is low-hanging fruit. I think you, being in the catbird seat, need to rephrase the question. Other than your wife and your kids, and blah, 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 and the fact that you're alive, blah, 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 and you, and knowing you, Todd.
Right, that's four. I get that.
Other than that, I mean, it's like the obvious question. In fact, there was a really funny story that somebody told on NPR where a guy said to, it's a question you just can't ask. It's almost a trick question. Lady says to her husband or boyfriend, no, lady says to her boyfriend, or would you rather kiss the most beautiful woman in the world for $10,000 or kiss me?
Well, yeah,
and
that's tough.
Of course, the guy says, well, of course I'll kiss you, thinking he's like, and then she turns to him and says, so I'm not the most beautiful woman in the world?
Right. You're right.
So
right.
You set me up. I can't win, you know?
Exactly. Right. My dad gave me the best advice ever when I was first putting Racing for Recovery together, and just kind of saying things like, God, you know, you just try and do some good, and somebody's saying you should have done X, or why didn't you do Y? And my dad said, you can stand on the street corner handing out $20 bills and someone's going to complain that they're not 50s. And boy, was the old man was right.
Oh my God. Okay, I have two responses to that because I just can't shut up. My dad had a very funny joke, which was basically the opposite of that. Kid says to his dad, hey, Dad, I need to borrow $100. The father says, $50? What do you need $20 for? Here's $5. But
that's good. That's good.
Yes. And then the other story is the following. You know, where you have this moment where you're looking at your child and you think, oh, I love this kid so much. Apropos of nothing, I'm just going to present the most glorious chocolate chip cookie. You know, like they didn't do anything for it. It's not even dessert time. It's just a random fun moment. So you hand them a beautiful chocolate chip cookie, apropos of nothing, right? They didn't expect it. And they turn to you and they say, well, why aren't there two? You know, like it's the same story. Like, why
Right.
aren't there two?
Right.
One wasn't on the table, bro. Come on.
Right. Come on. Give me something. Yes. Do you have a question for me?
Yes, I do have a question for you because you're doing such yeoman's work. I don't know what that means. But I've co-opted it. The yeoman. I guess, I don't know. We know a lawyer named Ken Yeomans. So, but you're doing such important work and you've been so dedicated to it and you've been so incredibly inspirational to and for so many. I just like you, and so I just want to hang out with you. But clearly, what goes with that is wanting to promote whatever it is you need promoting most within your organization, and be a friend to you in ways that help others, which is really what you're doing. So it's very selfless and very humbling. So I guess my question is, before we get off the call, excuse me, I just want to know what I can do to move your needle, and whatever the 16 or ideally 16 million people that are listening to this can do as well.
Well, I'll say it this way, and again, I'm going back to gratitude, and we talked about this when we were together a couple weeks ago. That was a great time for me, just the music, the stories and everything. And that's when you were very sarcastically, as you are, talking about I need to raise my level of expectations, which I thought was great. But I believe in, you can call it whatever. I mean, you had a couple of Buddhas around your house. I'm a godly guy. I love Buddha. I'm into all the things we talked about, right? So I believe we got put together for a reason. We're not quite sure exactly what that is. I don't think some of that I even want to talk about now because I don't want to jinx anything, but I know that we're going to do something together. You get what I'm doing. You understand what Racing for Recovery is, and you have the ability to help me help get our program out there. And I don't know what format that will be in, but I know that we're going to do something with it, and I'm excited for that. I'm interested in what you can do with this, and I'm looking forward to the people that eventually that will see whatever we do and will benefit from it. Yep. So that's my answer to that.
Well, that's terrific, and a brief response is that I don't want to mischaracterize myself as being spiritual or religious. I am my religion, to the extent I have one, is mostly just decency and empathy, and kindness, and all the things that a religion cannot, that a denomination or religion can't refer to themselves as if they're not any of those things.
Correct.
So we all got here the same way. We're all equally as important. Why are we fighting about it? The earliest, wars have been theologically based. They're still theologically based. There is no real rhyme or reason or rationale to them. And so, who said that that religion was the opiate of the masses? Was that Karl Marx, I think, or Gandhi?
Right.
I'm messing up my religion's the opiate of the masses. Anyhow, in some degree, it's really, really right. And I respect every religion, except a religion that doesn't respect another religion. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, right on.
And I think that if people want to call themselves pious or religious, they better bloody act like it and better walk the walk. Otherwise, you're a sham and a fraud. Sorry.
Wow. That's I like that answer. Let's segue into something. I watched Prefontaine last night again. Or I shouldn't. I started it and was dozing off during it, but it was on. And ever since you've mentioned Jared Leto, and embarrassingly, I did not know he played in that movie until after you were talking about it. But I watched that. He is phenomenal in that movie. Phenomenal. And I thought,
yeah. Jared Leto, by the way, is one of the, I mean, I would say he's one of the most underrated actors in the world, but that's sort of diminishing him. He's gotten so much of the credit and glory he really does deserve finally, but he could get more. And in full disclosure, I had forgotten that he was Prefontaine when I suggested him. I just thought that his age, what I believe I know about him, the fact that, I mean, he is in shape, I heard that he lives right near me in the Hollywood Hills. But I heard that he moved in a really cool silo, like a World War II bunker. It's bizarre. I'll let him tell you that if he ever comes on your show after he plays you in the movie. And he moved, I think, or has a place in Las Vegas because he's obsessed with climbing, rock climbing. I don't know that, and I don't really know him. I met him once, but he was photographed without his shirt on, and I say that with all whatever. He is ripped, and he is in fine condition, and he clearly takes care of himself and his body, and it means something to him. And you guys are the right age, and he's, you're both super handsome and blah, 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 and worthy of each other. So Jared, if you're listening, we might make you that offer to play Todd Crandell, don't call me Crandell, in the movie Racing for Recovery or whatever it's going to be called.
That's right.
Yeah. So, and by the way, that was not the only Prefontaine movie of the year. Isn't that bizarre?
I did not know that either. I thought.
Okay.
So there's another one.
Yeah, it was something called, I don't know, Higher Ground or Higher. Would you, while we're on, should I? Hang on. I'm going to actually Google it because I really don't remember the name. It's really, really, so there were two movies about this college runner from, was it Oregon State or
Oregon
University of Oregon, who I think probably, what was the main, was the takeaway that he was really the guy that helped launch Nike?
Well, that's one of them. Yes, he was that guy, but he also was just a phenomenal runner. That he was over the Olympics where there was the murders, or the hostages and so forth at that Olympics. He was at that.
Oh, that's right.
But yeah, he launched Nike.
Distance runner, right. Okay, so was known as Steve Prefontaine, blah, 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 Wikipedia. Steve Prefontaine movie. Hang on, there are two. Hang on. It's called Without Limits was the other one, 1998. And Prefontaine, so Without Limits was 1998. And then was, I don't remember, I think that was 98 also. Anyhow, how wild is that?
Well, if Jared can run that well, he certainly can bike and swim that well as well.
No question. I think he would. I actually think he would love. I mean, look, it all boils down to a fantastic script, which I was telling you about. He's an artist, He's not going to be interested, nor should we show him something that's mediocre. If we lick this story and this screenplay, and it's super, then we go out, and offer it to anybody we want. And I suspect it'll be him first. And I hope he says yes.
Well, John's going to have that for you right shortly. That's, yep. He's getting it. He's doing his job.
Right. So I'm glad you checked out and now you have to check out Without Limits and do your Steve Prefontaine Film Festival.
Right. I did watch some of Lord of War with Nick Cage as well, and Jared played my former self, I guess, in that movie. Holy cow! Watching him self-destruct in that with substances was interesting. So I guess what I'm saying, it's I'm doing my research on him, and that guy's an extraordinary talent. That's for sure.
He really is. He really, really is. And he's choosing really interesting roles. So, and that's what I consider one of the great benchmarks of a great actor, not somebody that just takes leads in movies because somebody's offering them leads in movies.
Right.
These are serious characters that are really, really, deep and nuanced. And sometimes, I mean, he's also like one of the great chameleons. I mean, there are certain movies you don't even know, when you're watching him, you have no idea it's him. So kudos to him on that. All right, enough of you, Jared Leto. You get enough glory and enough accolades and love. Let's move on. To people who need attention. You don't, which is good. I mean, you've arrived. You don't need attention.
So how about you're in the middle of a ride. I've taken up over an hour of your time. Give the folks something, either a trivia question you want to do. What's our closing thing for the day?
Okay. By the way, just want you to know that I am on a ride and that you've allowed it and that it hasn't, impugned the integrity of this chat, means I can go longer if you want, because I'm actually getting exercise while I'm chatting, which means I can stay healthier and alive longer, live longer, and be able to help you, let's say, right? So I'm being unbelievably generous by working out.
I like it. Just so you know, if you can have a conversation while you exercise, that you're in a good, whatever level of you're working out in right now. If you can carry on a conversation, you're doing it right. So kudos to you.
Oh, that's really sweet. That reminds me of why I started running, because for a few reasons. I wasn't, I was a mediocre basketball player, but I love the sport. I'm not big enough to play football, and I definitely wouldn't have had I known about the concussion and head trauma that is associated with that. I wasn't a good swimmer, but which is why I'll never compete against you in an Ironman competition. But I realized that running, particularly with a guy like for a guy like me, 5'10", 100 and at the time probably 130 pounds. Now I'm about 157 pounds. But it was something I could really compete at. And the other thing is that when I can take a long run with somebody, I could actually have a conversation during that run. So it is quality and meaningful time that one can spend, or on a hike, for instance, is also a great way to do that. But if you're going on an hour run, let's say, you get to know somebody. Or I don't mean that in a sort of cheesy sense. I mean, you talk about things, and you're also out in the world, and you can point things out and discuss things you wouldn't ordinarily talk about because they're somehow popping in your mind, or they're in your face, etc. You can't really have a meaningful chat when you're swimming 50 laps in an Olympic pool, right? So I sort of entered it because I'm a pretty social animal, and I thought it was the kind of sport I could actually enjoy, and I don't mean compete in a particularly competitive level. Compete in a competitive level. That's redundant, but I could really, benefit from and make the best of. And as I told you, I ran my first marathon, was the 86 LA Marathon, the first one, which was, it was Muhammad Ali who rang the bell, which was kind of beautiful.
Wow,
and I ran, that was a 3:47, which was embarrassing, but my best marathon was a 3:17, which you even said was not embarrassing.
No, that's impressive. That's not embarrassing.
And I told you, by the way, my favorite marathon story was my second or third marathon. My then girlfriend, Anne, who now lives in London. Hi, Annie. Did me the favor of getting up at 6 a.m. and dropped me off in downtown LA to go to the marathon, to compete in the marathon. I think it's the third or fourth one. And I don't know if it's her mistake or my mistake or whatever the circumstances were. I told you that she dropped me a mile away from the start of the marathon.
That's
and
great.
And I was pressed for time. So I had to sprint a mile to the start of a marathon. And you would know better than anybody, and every runner out there would know, that's pretty bloody annoying, my friend.
Yeah.
And I was saying things in my head that I would never say in public, like words that didn't even exist. That were, like my idea of the worst words ever.
Listen, you were just giving everybody else a chance. That was all. It was a courtesy run.
Yeah, I like that. So
Yeah.
it was subconscious. I did that. I get it now. So the 104 people that actually outran me because of that benefited from it.
Absolutely. Right?
Thank you.
Right.
And God, what a nice spin.
So I did have this for a question because I will be out there with you again. And when we go running, notice how I'm already putting that out there. Getting up to your place up there is all that ups and downs and all that. Are we actually going to leave from your place to go running down that hill and then have to come back up, or are we driving somewhere?
No, we didn't get into much of my environmental obsession and passion, but for me, to have a carbon footprint to go exercise is painful.
Agreed.
So while I have a solar powered house and all electric cars, and my footprint is lower than most, I just feel like there's something really beneficial and amazing about being able to figure out whatever your workout is without having to, cause traffic or CO2 emissions or time that you could be spending exercising. So
Agreed.
one of the great things about living up in the Hollywood Hills where I am is there's an incredible hike/run in walking distance right down the hill.
Beautiful.
And it's terrific. So you don't have to get no car and,
Attaboy.
and it's great. It's just a lovely thing to do. And so, anyhow, it's an entirely zero emission experience, except for the fact that you're wearing out a little bit of rubber on the bottom of your shoes, which theoretically, to replace creates a carbon footprint, something like that.
Something like that. Well, I'm looking forward to it. We're going to do that for sure.
Yeah. I do have a poo story. Should we end on the poo story?
Let's do that. We'll end on the poo story. That's good.
Okay. So you got to end on a poo story. You start on a pee story, you end on a poo story.
There you go.
How about
That's right.
bookends, my friend?
That's good.
By the way, the next time we talk, it'll be all about vomit. Okay.
Absolutely. Right.
Okay. So I am on a panel, some film panel, and we're talking about movies that have an environmental impact. And, I'm a teeny bit holier than thou because there are few smart asses out there. I'll say, yeah, okay, well, so you made that or you made that, but what do you do? What do you do to lower your carbon footprint? That was a little bit of a Cartman inspiration from South Park.
Yeah.
What do you do, Kyle? Kyle? And I just decided, saying I'm gonna take the bait and I'm gonna be an asshole. And I just went for it. Okay. And I went for everything: the solar power, the drips, the low voltage lighting, the electric cars, the boards I sit on, the blah, blah. I just, the vegetable garden, the orchard, all that stuff. Now, I understand that you have to have a bit of resources more than most to be able to really be green, unless you're just like really, a mountain man, which is even more admirable, or mountain woman or person. So I said, and I said, I'll tell you, I not only walk that walk, but I walked that walk this weekend on a dog walk. And I was on that hike I was just telling you about, and I had my dogs with me. And one of my dogs, scooted to the side and did her business. And I looked down and it was one of those wet ones, right? And it was wet, right? And I thought, I've got a bag here. There's just nothing I can do to pick that sucker up, right? I suppose I could come back in a week after it's baked in the sun and it's sort of like a nice pie, right? Like a nice cow pie. But that wasn't really going to happen at the time. So I said to the person who asked me the snide question, I said, so I looked around and I grabbed my bags and I picked up 6 or 8 or 10 other poos that other people had left to offset my dog's poo print. Okay.
You're even.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a little bit of a nice, thoughtful moment. And it's a great way to organically talk about poo.
Right.
Without, I don't know, peering as though you're sort of perversely obsessed with poo, because I'm not. I think it's a very healthy thing to talk about.
This, my friend, has been one of the most extraordinary podcasts I've done. To have those two bookends like that, I mean, you can't beat that.
Oh my God. Well, what do I have to do to make it the most extraordinary? Tell a vomit story?
We'll do I'll have you on again. Well, I'll tell you what, when we do Jared and you, then we'll have a vomit story.
That'd be terrific. I do have one, and it was at a World Cup soccer game in LA. Okay. It wasn't me vomiting, just so you know.
Well, I want to hear that off the record.
Okay, and one at my sister's dinner table at a birthday party. Okay, I'll tell you that too. They're both worthy of your podcast, I promise. I am so grateful that you had me on. I'm so grateful that you deemed me worthy enough to take this hour and 7 minutes. And I'm really grateful to you for all the work you do. I find you terribly impressive and humble and funny and cool. And I thank you on behalf of all the people you are helping. So,
all good, my friend. Thanks for being on. I'm going to talk to you soon and see you soon.
Okay. Your children are very lucky to have you as a papa.
I appreciate that, buddy.
Right.
Thanks a lot for being on the show, bud. Take care.
Bye. Take care, you too.
Bye. That was another awesome episode of Ignite Euphoria. As usual, if you or a loved one is battling addiction, please call Racing for Recovery 419-824-8462 and look out very soon for our new documentary, The Road to 100. Take it easy, everybody.